I had posted a screenshot from a movie called Empire of the Sun. There are 5 pieces of media that when I hear, see, or read them, I get teary. And I'm a fairly stoic kind of guy, but any 5 of these, I see them, I hear them, I'm going to start tearing up just because they're that powerful, impactful, and moving to me. And one of which is the scene from Empire of the Sun, in which there is a raid by American fighter planes on the airfield next door to this prison camp. It's Suchow Prison, which is operated by the Chinese government to this day. But during World War II, it was a prison camp for British citizens that were taken prisoner when the Japanese invaded China right before Pearl Harbor. Now, this is a vaguely true story. It's Steven Spielberg's direction of a true story, written by J.G. Ballard, who wrote a quasi-fictional character named James Graham in this prison camp, and how he went from being a 12-year-old boy to being a 16-year-old boy in this prison camp. This morning, you and I were having the conversation where I mentioned that was, in my humble opinion, the 3rd best World War II movie ever made. So you asked me what, in my opinion, were the top 2 World War II movies. I said, well, part 1, in my never to be humble opinion, is a tie for first place between another Spielberg film, actually 2 other Spielberg films, Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
For different reasons, but they're both spectacular works of art, both historically accurate. Number 2 was very interesting because, in my opinion, it's the 2nd greatest World War II movie ever made, and no one's ever heard of it, and not a single gunshot in the entire film. And it's called Conspiracy. It's made for HBO, and I've never been disappointed by a made-for-HBO film. And I would dare say that this film is hyper-accurate when gauging the overall accuracy of World War II films. And what it is about, it's about a 90-minute meeting that occurred in January of 1942, referred to historically as the Wannsee Conference. That's spelled Wannnsee. Wannsee is a suburb of Berlin, and it was a fairly well-to-do, wealthy suburb on a lake, and had a lot of nice homes. And as we all know, if you happen to be a wealthy Jew in Berlin in the 1930s, in short order, you were no longer going to be a wealthy Jew with a nice house in Berlin, because the Nazi government was going to take that away from you. And that's the story of one of these homes that the SS took over and used it as a meeting place. After the Nuremberg, or during the investigation for the Nuremberg trials, one of the participants of this conference, the Wannsee Conference, was found to have a copy of the minutes of this conference in his safe. And this was the smoking gun to the Holocaust. Prior to the Wannsee Conference, there was the T4 euthanasia program. There were the laws for the protection of German blood. There were already mobile gas chambers built. There were the Einsatzgruppen, which were
Einsatz.
Yeah. It sounds bad.
It all sounds bad.
Yeah. What kills me is all these SS guys. And particularly the Waffen-SS, which were of a special unit called the Totenkopfverbände. Can you imagine going to work? Yeah, can you imagine going to work every day at a joint called, or with a group of people that call themselves the Stützstaffel Totenkopfverbände? Well, translated, that means the Death's Head Brigade of the Protection Squad.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and all you had to do if you were a member of the Totenkopfverbände is take off your cute little cap and look at the front of it, and you would notice a very distinct insignia, a skull and crossbones. I mean, for Christ's sakes, these guys have a skull and crossbones on their cap and on their lapel.
Who doesn't?
And do you really have to wonder who the bad guys are? Getting back to the story of the conference, it was organized by everybody's favorite Nazi, Adolf Eichmann, a superior of his named Reinhard Heydrich.
He doesn't.
Reinhard Heydrich had the moniker of the Butcher of Prague. He was also president of Interpol at one time in his career. That's between the war, and it was the predecessor agency to Interpol. But in any case, Reinhard Heydrich was given an order by Reichschancellor Heinrich Himmler to develop a final solution to the Jewish question. And
yes,
basically,
they're still looking for that, aren't they? They're still looking for a final solution to the Jewish question, aren't they?
Yeah, one would think.
So it seems.
Yeah, this meeting was 90 minutes long, and from the minutes, it's basically a discussion amongst cabinet members of how to implement an already decided by an executive decided directive. And I'm trying to remember the quote of Heydrich, which was something, I'm paraphrasing here, the policy of immigration of Jews will now be superseded by a policy of evacuation to the east. Yeah, that becomes a euphemism throughout the whole movie. One of the ministers mentions extermination, and one of the lawyers sitting next to him kind of elbows him and says, no, evacuation.
Love it.
Yeah, well, and there's one very chilling scene, very powerful scene in the HBO movie where a deputy commander named Rudolf Lange, he was a deputy commander of SS forces in Riga and a member of the Einsatzgruppen, which were SS guys that followed the regular army in areas where the regular German army, the Wehrmacht, had already done the Blitzkrieg thing and run through. The Einsatzgruppen would come through and round up Jewish people, round up gypsies, round up anybody they thought was going to give them trouble, and deal with them as they saw fit. And that kind of dovetails into this very chilling scene where they're talking about evacuation of this way, evacuation of that way, and Major Langer stands up and says, "I'm sorry to interrupt, General, but I have the real feeling that I already evacuated 30,000 Jews in Riga, Latvia, when I shot them. Were they evacuated when they fell? Is that evacuation?" And then he sits down and they continue with the conference. And Heydrich there basically says, yes, in my opinion, they were evacuated. That is where the meeting starts turning into, this isn't just a policy meeting. This is actual discussion of the mechanism of how to murder 12 million people. Adolf Eichmann is played by Stanley Tucci, who I think is a terrific actor. Kenneth Branagh plays Adolf Eichmann, and in an interview about the film, he said that in 30 years of acting, he had never played a more disturbing role.
As a follow-up, do you think that the things that happened back then are even possible to happen again?
Well, of course I believe it's possible. To quote the first act of, I believe it's the first act of Shakespeare's The Tempest, that which is past is prologue.
Right. I mean, it's happened a bunch of times. The attempted extermination of Jews has happened a bunch of times throughout 5,000 years.
Well, but it's not just the Jews. I'm looking at this as a mechanism of government murdering people that disagree with it or that government just doesn't like. I kind of divide your question into two sides. The first side is, could it happen here in the United States? Well, and the answer to that historically is obviously yes. If you don't think it could happen here, I would like you to find a Japanese American and ask them about their grandparents. Just when American citizens needed their rights most, the American government took them away and put these people into camps. If you're looking,
these were American-born Japanese people. American.
No, they were. Yeah,
they were Japanese people who were born in the United States, so they were as American as in you and I, by definition.
Yeah, Howard, they were as American as you and I. They just happened to look Japanese and live in California. And for that crime, our government rounded them up, put them on trains, and shipped them to camps. Now, granted, our government didn't murder these people, but
What did they do with those people?
They were held in internment camps for between 2 and 4 years, and then were finally released and given $25 and a bus ticket back to their hometown.
Every Japanese person in America?
No. Approximately 160,000 persons of Japanese descent were rounded up and put into camps. About 60% of those were American citizens. So I want to say it was about 80,000 American citizens, and they were of Japanese descent that happened to live on the West Coast because,
Right.
It was political, as Ronald Reagan put it, it was a lack of leadership and fog of war and political hysteria that caused these people's rights across the board to just be instantly yanked away from them. Now, if you don't think that's a far enough step, I'd like you to find an American Indian and ask them about their great-grandparents, if you happen to be able to find one. And I'm cribbing that from Carlin, but yeah, we've made those folks just a little bit difficult to locate. Forget looking at the VA as a model for Obamacare. No, look at, I think they call it IHC, Indian Healthcare Administration. Look at the way that operates. Look at the percentages of American Indians that die of heart disease, that are just, that don't get quality health care. That'll open your eyes right there. But the point I'm making there in relation to that is, in the latter part of the 19th century, we committed genocide on those people. We conned them into signing treaties that the American government was going to take care of every aspect of their lives, and you know what we did? We killed 80 to 90% of them. Wow. So that's a historical basis for can it happen here?
Who was president? Who was president at the time of the Japanese roundup?
The president at the time of the Japanese roundup, Howard, would be Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I'll tell you something about FDR's uncle, Joe Delano, who made his family fortune by running clipper ships full of opium into Asia. But anyway, so that answers the question of can it happen here? Now, can it happen again?
Or will it?
Well, can it happen again? Of course it can. It's happening in Kigali, Rwanda,
Syria.
It's happening in any number of third world banana republic African Act dictatorship. Those that think it can't happen here, it can't happen again, the only comment I have to that is may the chains rest lightly upon you.
That's why Barack Obama's a genius. He does understand that over half this country does not believe it can happen again. But they're wrong. And here's the last question on that topic. Is it happening, in your opinion, as we sit in here and speaking? Because there's a lot of similarities between what's exactly going on right now and what happened before. Is it happening as we speak? Are we being set up in that way? But
that's really the question. Is it happening now? I can tell you right now there are 4 in Pennsylvania and 7 in Georgia FEMA camps. 5 of the ones I've looked at in Georgia are fully staffed and operational but have no prisoners there yet.
What's a FEMA camp? Describe a FEMA camp, because FEMA to most people is like a nice organization that releases money to people and helps when there's bad storms.
I think the good people of New Orleans and the good people of Staten Island would disagree with you a long way on that. FEMA couldn't get water to the Superdome in 5 days.
What is a FEMA camp?
It's a residential detention facility.
Meaning it's a neighborhood?
No. Here's a good example for the listener. Throw into your Google search bar T. Don Hutto, DONHUTTO, T space Don space Hutto. And you will see, and I've personally driven by this one many a time, and it is a residential detention facility northeast of Austin, Texas. And what it's used for is it's a private contracted company that is used for that uses this facility to house families while they're immigration status is determined to see if they'll be
Thrown in the garbage.
deported back to their country of origin, jailed here, released. It's basically a holding camp. I think the Nazis would refer to that as a transit ghetto or a transit camp. So that's a good example of one you can look up right now. And I plan to, in Western PA and in Georgia, visit those locations just to stop by. Some of them are even available on Google Maps.
I hate those fucking Google cars that drive around with the big cameras on top of them, dude. I've seen 3 in the last 2 weeks, and it's not making me happy because I know what Google's up to. They're stealing your shit and staring at your every move, and they're listening to this motherfucking conversation right now.
Oh, Howard, the boys and the girls at the Fusion Center are listening to this conversation.
Who the hell are they? Go ahead.
But that's a whole other conversation as well.
I want to know more about these FEMA camps. What are they going to be used for besides housing illegal immigrants? Because Ellis Island was also used that way, wasn't it?
No. Ellis Island was not used to house illegal immigrants. Ellis Island was a quarantine and processing facility for legal immigrants.
Ah, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
What do you mean legal immigrants?
People who were coming to this country.
Oh, so FEMA, I gotcha. FEMA camps are for people who are already here illegally to be rounded up, like the Japanese were, and Ellis Island was a place for people who were coming here and wanted to get in here legally as a place to either quarantine them if they were sick or assign them a social security number or whatever number that is that they were assigned, and now you're a free American.
Correct, and you're almost correct there. You said, I believe, that FEMA camps are a place to detain people here who are here illegally. Well, no, the American citizens of Japanese descent were here legally, and they were detained in a very similar camp. In fact, many of these facilities that FEMA is outfitting were the same detention centers that Japanese Americans, and there were also Italian Americans and German Americans that were...
and Jews, dude. There's always Jews there.
That were interned as well.
Now, can I ask you something? Will a FEMA camp look like a jail, or will it look like kind of a row of homes where Sammy the Bull would end up?
Oh, no. It looks like a jail. In fact, what I'd like you to do in your day-to-day travels throughout the southern New Jersey and western or eastern Pennsylvania areas, keep an eye out whenever you cross a railroad track. Just kind of make note, look left, look right, and see if you see any facilities with chain link fences and inward-facing barbed wire.
Those are the public schools. Go ahead, just kidding.
Inward-facing barbed wire. You need to take notice of that, and having been in the security business, you know what that's for, right? Most chain link fences these days will have barbed wire on the top, and it will be slanted. If it's slanted towards the outside, if the barbed wire is slanted outside, it's obviously to keep people that are outside from getting into the fenced area. If the barbed wire is inward facing, it's obviously to keep people inside that fence from getting out. So yeah, in your daily travels, Hal and listeners, just keep an eye out, and they're usually near rail access. You know, that train's never late, guys. I saw one in downtown Atlanta, near downtown Atlanta, a couple of weeks ago. It was a what looked to be a abandoned construction site. It was very large. It was covered in multi-terraced concrete, and it looked like they'd either demolished a building or begun to build one and abandoned the project. But it was the size of a city block, and it was right after you crossed a railroad track, and not the local transit authority, but a actual rail track, and it looked like it had been vacant for dozens of years. There were the telltale signs, piles of garbage in various areas. It looked like it had been abandoned, except for one unique feature. It had brand new, shiny chain link fencing around it with inward-facing barbed wire. I think I'll post some pictures of that. That site made the impression upon me to the extent I stopped and snapped some photographs of it.
Did you run as fast as you can afterwards?
No. I continued on without my. I'm not afraid of my government.
What are you, crazy?
Maybe so, but I refuse to live. I refuse to live in fear. What's going to happen is going to happen, and I honestly believe that we're going to get the word out. People are going to start to believe and see and look at what's in front of them. They're going to wake up and realize that our government is entirely out of control. I'm going to close with this and leave you with this thought. All I can say is there were many things leading up to this event, and I'm trying real hard not to go down the conspiracy theory wormhole here. But I'm going to leave you with this thought. Because of Section 802 of the Patriot Act, because of the Military Commissions Act in 2006, and because of Sections 1021 and 1022 of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, this is not the country I was born in, and it is certainly not the country I wish to die in, and it definitely ain't going to be the country I leave to my son. That having been said, I want you to remember that absolutely everything Hitler did in Germany was legal.
And with that, my friend, I leave you.
Thanks, Howard. Keep the faith and don't be afraid.